All right, hey there, I'm Fox 10 News Chief Meteorologist Jason Smith with an update on what is still Tropical Storm Debby, but it may not be a tropical storm much longer. It's on its way to becoming a hurricane, and we've noticed some changes with the structure of this strong tropical storm today, starting to see heavy bursting of showers and thunderstorms around the center, especially on the northern flank and on the eastern side of the system. And it's over some very, very warm water and in a light wind shear environment in the eastern Gulf of Mexico. Now, let's take a look at it here because this system is just to the east of the central Gulf Coast. It's over towards the Florida Big Bend region. And let's see here, I'll put up this shot here so I can talk, and also you can see where this thing is going. And looks like I have a different MAC system routed in there. So what I'll do is I'm going to bring this one over. Here you go. All right, so we are looking at the system on the satellite radar picture right now, and we are expecting it to continue to strengthen. I'm going to go ahead and bring that over. And how about that? All right, so I've got the right MAC system in there now. This system will strengthen and become a hurricane tonight, and the structure of the storm is fairly well defined. It is headed to an area, a part of Florida's coast that's especially vulnerable to storm surge because it's like a bowl. And so the water is drawn up all along Florida's west coast, and then it gets funneled into that pocket around St. Mark's Wildlife Refuge, really anywhere from Cedar Key over towards Apalachicola. It's what's referred to as the Forgotten Coast. This is a part of Florida that is sparsely populated compared to a lot of the tourist destinations, and in a lot of spots there's not even a lot of beach there. There's some reefs, and there are a few barrier islands in some places, and a couple of places where there's a beach, but a lot of it, the marsh just kind of transitions into the Gulf of Mexico. There's also a very, very long, extensive continental shelf, so you've got the potential there for storm surge with the shallow waters that can really drive up the surge. So let's look at, first of all, our local radar here. Let's see if I can get that pulled up for you. There we go. So locally, we've had some showers and thunderstorms today, and I'll bring it up full so you can kind of see what's happening right this minute if you're watching us live. If not, just go to your Fox 10 weather app for the latest radar images. We got one little pop-up shower near Fowl River, and these are on the far outer edges of the tropical system. We got another storm in Pascagoula, and a couple of showers off the Panhandle, but you know, really just a few isolated showers across the region. It looks like we've got a little bit of activity up here around Atmore also. We've got a little quick moving shower. This is pretty indicative of what we expect to see. This one's actually a little up I-65 from Atmore. We don't expect a lot of rain locally. We are on the dry side. One of the things that is a concern would be the danger for rip currents at the beaches, and we've gone from glass calm conditions at the beaches to very rough surf, and this is because we've got a tropical storm in the eastern Gulf, and it's the wind angle that's especially problematic, kind of an easterly push with the swell and with the wind, and so that can create a higher rip current danger. Right now we're looking at a moderate rip current risk, and it's getting dark out there now, but there's still a lot of people down at the beach. This is kind of the last hurrah before school starts back, so a lot of people are taking that one last trip down to the beach, even if it's mostly local tourists, but a lot of people are down there, and we do expect to see that moderate rip current risk continuing for tomorrow. It feels like 99 degrees out at the beach right now. This is hot beach weather, and it's going to get even hotter this week. One of the problems with a landfalling tropical system is that on the east and northeast flank of that system, you can see tornadoes spin up on the outer rain bands. And we've seen some tornado warnings across Florida, and we're under a tornado watch there, but you can see that does not include the central Gulf Coast. It's along the peninsula and the Big Bend area. And looking at some of the advisories that are in effect, there is a hurricane warning from Apalachicola, basically Indian Pass is Apalachicola, all the way back around to the mouth of the Suwannee River, which is not far away from Cedar Key. So that's a hurricane warning. And there is an inland hurricane warning as well in southern Georgia. And then there are tropical storm warnings just outside of that, but no watches or warnings for our area. Here's a look at the wind gusts, starting to see things picking up. We've got a buoy not far away from the northwest quadrant of the storm. It just had a gust of 58, a gust of 51, a buoy just off of Tampa. The core of the heavy winds are actually over the Gulf right now, which is good, but it's not going to be the case as this thing heads up towards Perry, Florida. That's going to be one of the communities that's probably going to see some of the most wind from this thing. Checking it out on the satellite imagery, you could see all this dark stuff. So the colors, this is called an enhanced infrared satellite picture, and we colorize the cloud tops, and the colder the cloud tops, the more intense the colors are. And when you start getting into the dark color, those are extremely cold clouds. Colder clouds are higher in the atmosphere. So if it senses colder clouds, it means there's a much deeper cloud mass, and the thunderstorms are worse. You would think maybe warmer would be more problematic, but actually the colder it is, the taller the thunderstorms are. They go way up into the upper atmosphere, and we're seeing a core of heavy thunderstorms with some cold cloud tops right on the north and on the east side of the center of this strong tropical storm. Winds at 70 miles an hour. There's not anything to really keep it from strengthening. We do expect it to continue to intensify tonight. The air around it is pretty moist. It's a moist environment, so there's no dry air, not a lot of wind shear. It is a light wind shear environment. And a 70-mile-per-hour tropical storm, pressure 992 millibars. It's moving north at 12, and it's located about 100 miles due west of Tampa. So this thing is not going to make a direct hit on Tampa. It's actually hitting Florida probably at the worst place because it's got to track so much further across the Gulf before it comes ashore, and that's what's allowing it to strengthen. Here is the official track from the National Hurricane Center. It does indicate that they're thinking it will become a hurricane tonight, and it should come ashore somewhere up into that pocket of the Big Bend, which is right near St. Mark's, possibly Carabel area, really somewhere between St. George's Island and back around to about the Steinhatchee River area. And then it'll move up into Georgia and South Carolina, and it's going to put on the brakes and stall. And we see this time and time again. When you have a storm that's moving slowly, it amplifies the impacts. Remember Hurricane Sally here. And this thing's going to put on the brakes and drift over Georgia and South Carolina, and it may even be out in the Atlantic for a little while, but the forecast is highly uncertain once it gets to South Georgia. We're very confident that it's headed towards South Georgia. Look at the computer models. They're tightly clustered that this thing is going to move up into southern Georgia. After that, they start to get this crazy look to them, and you even see the H-warp and some of the other models actually pirouette the remnants of it back across the coast and to the west. So really anything can happen. Some of the models take it up to South Carolina. The good news is whatever happens is going to come ashore, and so if it were to come back out over the Gulf, it doesn't appear to be a potential issue for us as far as being a strong tropical system. But the problem with this kind of a track is that it could create big problems with flooding rains in Georgia and South Carolina, and the potential is there for heavy rainfall and flooding, and we could see over 20 inches of rain in some spots. So why is this thing stalling? Well, it's sandwiched between two ridges, and you can see how this thing is just stuck without anything to really push it along all the way through the end of the week. And it is possible that we'll have a low pressure area over parts of East Alabama even as of Friday. Now keep in mind it's not going to be as strong, but we could still see it just sandwiched or trapped between two ridges. Kind of an interesting thing there. And I'm going to bring it up full and kind of back it up because I want to show you exactly what's happening here. So I'm going to pull the slider bar back. And what's going on is that, you know, as of today, and into tomorrow morning, the ridge over the Bermuda Ridge is still pretty strong. There's an extension of it all the way down into the Bahamas. But when we get into Tuesday and Wednesday, the ridge over the western United States and the ridge over the Atlantic, and especially the ridge over the Atlantic, begin to weaken. And so that's why it's going to stall. You can see Tuesday and Wednesday, there's a big gap between these two ridges. Now, that ridge over the western United States is going to be strong enough to give us an incredible heat wave here. We're going to see a northerly flow on the outer edge of that low pressure area, which could be over the Atlantic on Wednesday morning. And then could the low kind of want to retrograde or drift west? That's possible. The GFS is suggesting that. We'll just have to see. So rain totals, how much rain will some areas see? This is the potential for flash flooding, and there is a moderate flash flood risk from Tampa all the way back around to about Carabel, Florida, and then a slight flash flood risk up into southern Georgia. Here's what we're seeing with the rain totals over the next 7 days, and a foot of rain could fall in Florida. 10 to 20 inches of rain could fall in Georgia and South Carolina, as well as parts of North Carolina. And even with it being a low-end hurricane, some of these things, when they're slow moving, can be the worst case scenario from a freshwater flooding. This is from perspective. This is all the rain causing the problems there. And warm water environment, so water temperatures in the Gulf are running around 85 to 89 degrees. Toasty stuff there. Plenty of fuel for this thing. And so Debby is the name, and the next one would be Ernesto. So, it's common thinking, human nature, to say, well, okay, this one missed the central Gulf Coast. Is there anything else out there? Well, it's August, and there is. There is a wave, which is a low probability wave right now that's expected to zip right across the Caribbean, cross the Yucatan, and enter the Gulf, possibly hitting Mexico or Texas in about a week or so. Right now, the odds of development only about 20%, but there is one other wave out there right now. So we'll watch it and see what happens. I want to bring up the satellite imagery for you one more time. And just heavy rain ongoing in Florida right now. Storm surge 6 to 10 feet. Could see a foot of rain, maybe more in some places as this thing comes ashore and puts on the brakes and stalls over southern Georgia. Appreciate you joining us here on our Gulf stream and on YouTube. A lot of different ways to see this. Appreciate you tuning in, and I'll have a complete update in your forecast on our newscast tonight on Fox 10 at 9 p.m. See you then.